Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of my crafting guide. Before we go on to new methods of training crafting, let's go back to bracelets. I got a tip from one of my friends that emerald bracelets are actually a pretty good way to craft too. So, I went and tried it. Emerald bracelets, as can be expected, are in between sapphire and ruby bracelets cost-wise. They sell for near minimum, so you don't have to alch them, but you can if you want to. Or, if you're a huge fan of Castle Wars, you can just enchant them into Castle Wars bracelets. So, in the end, you're basically faced with 4 different options. By selling the emerald bracelets, you get 1 GP per XP loss and about 65,000 crafting experience per hour. By alching them for 915 coins, you lose 106 GP per bracelet, which is 1.6 GP loss per XP gained. You can expect about 30,000 crafting and magic experience per hour using this method. Your third option is to sell the Castle Wars bracelets for 909 GP each. Including the cost of the runes to enchant them, they'll cost 966 GP each, so you'll only lose about 57 GP per bracelet. Alching the enchanted bracelets is just impractical. And your fourth and final option is to simply use them in Castle Wars. If you've never used one before, they're a must-have in any Castle Wars game. The best way to sum up emerald bracelets is just by saying meh. I mean, they're more expensive and quicker than sapphire bracelets, but they're less expensive and slower than ruby bracelets. And this is pretty much what you'd expect by something that's in between. So basically, just choose the type of bracelet that you think is best. Okay, now that we're done with that, let's move on to our next piece of jewelry, which is gold amulets. The good thing about this is that it's free to play. Basically, this method consists of buying gold bars, using an amulet mold to craft them into a gold amulet, and selling the gold amulet. Believe it or not, these amulets are actually in big demand, and I'll explain why later. Crafting the gold amulet gives 30 XP, and it only loses about 15 GP. With a 0.5 GP per XP loss and about 40,000 crafting experience per hour gained, this method is decent and is definitely a good option for free-to-players. So, why exactly do these things sell? Well, members use the level 80 Lunar Magic spell, String Jewelry. It only gives about 5,000 crafting experience per hour, but you can get upwards of 120,000 magic experience per hour. But obviously, since this is a crafting guide, I'm not going to go into detail about the magic. So, what do I think about gold amulets? Well, it's pretty inexpensive to make, and the XP rate is decent for such a low level required to make them. But there are better members' ways to get crafting experience. But if you're free to play, this is a great way to go. So, I give it a 4 out of 5. It's decent, cheap, easy to make. Alright, let's go to gems now. Cutting gems is pretty expensive, but it's really good experience. Here is a list of each gem's XP per hour rate and the cost per XP. The Sapphire. They cost 5.9 GP per XP. They give approximately 105,000 crafting experience per hour. The Emerald. They cost approximately 6.2 GP per XP. They give about 140,000 crafting experience per hour. The Ruby. They cost approximately 7.3 GP per XP. They give about 180,000 crafting experience per hour. The Diamond. It costs approximately 9.5 GP per XP. It gives about 230,000 crafting experience per hour. And after the Diamond, the practicality of cutting gems for XP pretty much ends. But, for the fun of it, I also calculated how much XP the more expensive gems would give. And, of course, their costs. The Dragonstone. It costs approximately 35.6 GP per XP. That's a lot, by the way. It gives approximately 300,000 XP per hour. And finally, everybody's favorite gem, the Onyx. It costs an astounding 1,194 GP per XP. It would give about 375,000 XP per hour. Basically, getting 99 crafting cutting Onyx would cost over 14 billion GP, but it would be the fastest and most expensive way to get 99 crafting. Well, gems are amazingly good experience for such low levels, but as you notice, they cost a ton too. I give it a 3 out of 5. I guess it's good on in early levels if you really want to power craft, but once you get a pretty decent crafting level, you should definitely switch to a different method because this just costs too much. Next we have glass making. Making glass requires soda ash and a bucket of sand. With these two ingredients in your inventory, use the soda ash on the furnace to create glass. Making molten glass gives 20 XP. Also, it costs about 3 GP per XP using this method, but it's extremely slow XP, generating only about 24,000 XP per hour. Making glass probably isn't the way to go if you actually want to get crafting experience and a nice level. However, it's worth mentioning that the supplies needed to make glass are pretty easy to collect, and if you collect them yourself, you could be making pretty good money. The real XP comes from making products from the molten glass. The smartest option is to make glass orbs, which gives 52.5 XP per molten glass. At an hourly XP rate of about 85,000 XP, they only lose 2.7 GP per XP, making them a terrific way to train crafting without too much cost. But why do people buy orbs? To make battle staves. Speaking of which, let's move on to battle staves. Oh yeah, by the way, I know it sounds kind of weird to say staves, because most people refer to them as staffs, but that's how it's referred to in Runescape, so I'm just gonna go by that. Now, the quickest way to train with these is to make air battle staves, and for the purpose of this video, I'll assume that the orbs have been bought rather than made. Making the air battle staff costs around 9,400 GP. They sell for 9,050 GP, making it a loss of 350 GP. Also, they give 137.5 XP per staff, which makes this around 2.5 GP per XP. Sounds great, doesn't it? But I give it a 3 out of 5. Why such a low rating? Well, I'll explain. The Grand Exchange sets limits on the amount of items you can buy at a time. For example, you can buy 25,000 fire runes or 10,000 sharks, but for most weapons, the limit is 100. And unfortunately, the battle staff falls under the category as a weapon. So you can only buy 100 battle staves every 4 hours. However, if you could acquire a very large amount of them, you could expect XP gains of around 23,500 XP an hour. So basically, these are a great cheap boost of crafting experience that you can get every so often, but it's not really a practical way to train crafting. Are you ready for the most obscure method of crafting that you've ever heard? It's time to make some feather headdresses. Okay, let me explain. Feather headdresses are used in summoning. They're used to carry combat-related scrolls within the helmet. But enough about summoning, let's get back to crafting. To craft a feather headdress, you need a coif and 20 colored hunting feathers. Also, you'll need 79 crafting. They're actually pretty good. I mean, they're really inexpensive, they give 50 crafting experience, but there's a catch. As with battle staves, you can only buy 100 coifs and 100 hunter feathers at a time. But if you manage to get a whole bunch of them, either by, buying them from a player or spending weeks buying them in the Grand Exchange, then the XP rate is actually really good. It gives around 145,000 crafting experience each hour. As for the cost, well, that varies. Each feather is a little more or less expensive than the other, and currently the red feather is the cheapest at 4 GP each. So with that in mind, it would be only 3.6 GP per XP. Unfortunately, feather headdresses are pretty much impossible to sell, so you either have the choice of selling them to a general store or just keep them in your bank as dead weight. But hey, as with battle staves, this is a good, quick, cheap XP. Well, that's pretty much it. I think through both of these guides I've pretty much gone through all the popular or practical ways of crafting. If you can think of any other, methods that I've left out through this guide, please comment and tell me. Or even if you have any questions or comments, feedback, anything, just comment and I'll get back to you. However, there is one request about questions. There's one type of question that I'm kind of tired of answering. The general format looks pretty much like this. So yeah, I'd really appreciate it if no one asked that question. But don't get me wrong, I don't mind questions on certain methods or techniques. I just get that certain question too often. Anyways, thanks very much for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. I also hope that this video helped you find other ways of crafting.